The plastic seat in the Greyhound station stuck to my thighs through my worn jeans. It was 94 degrees in Atlanta. The air conditioning had been broken for 3 hours, and I was watching a roach crawl across the floor toward my duffel bag. My only bag. Everything I owned fit inside it. My phone buzzed. Another photo from the family group chat I'd been muted from but could still see. My sister Vivienne in a $47,000 Vera Wang gown, surrounded by 7 bridesmaids in custom lavender silk. The caption from my mother read, "The most beautiful bride in Thornton history. Only 3 more days until the wedding of the century." I should have deleted myself from that chat months ago. But sometimes pain is the only proof you're still alive. My name is Margot Thornton. I'm 26 years old. And 3 days ago, my parents handed me a $200 Greyhound ticket and told me that my presence at my sister's $12 million wedding would be inappropriate given the circumstances. The circumstances being that I exist. Let me back up. The Thorntons are Charleston royalty. Old money, older grudges. My great-great-grandfather made his fortune in textiles after the Civil War, and every generation since has dedicated itself to 2 things: growing that fortune and maintaining appearances. My father, Harrison Thornton III, runs Thornton Capital, a private equity firm that manages $2.3 billion in assets. My mother, Camille, chairs every charity board worth chairing and hasn't worn the same outfit twice since 1987. And then there's Vivienne, my older sister by 3 years. Valedictorian. Princeton. Harvard MBA. Engaged to Reed Montgomery, whose family owns half the commercial real estate in the Southeast. Their wedding wasn't just a wedding. It was a merger. A 400-guest, black-tie, Chateau-in-Provence spectacle that had been written about in Vogue, Town and Country, and the New York Times style section. I was not in any of those articles. I was not in any of the photos. I was not on the guest list. See, in the Thornton family, there's a golden child and there's a ghost. Vivienne was the golden child. I was the ghost. The one they mentioned in whispers. The one whose bedroom they converted into a home gym when I was 17 and still living in it. The one who got a bus ticket while Vivienne got a castle. It started when I was born. My mother had complications during delivery. Emergency C-section. Hemorrhaging. 3 blood transfusions. She nearly died, and according to family legend, she looked at me in the hospital and said to my father, "This one almost killed me." I was 3 days old. I don't remember it. But she never let me forget it. Growing up, Vivienne had ballet lessons, piano recitals, and summer programs at European boarding schools. I had hand-me-down clothes, a bedroom next to the laundry room, and a clear understanding that my college fund had been reallocated to Vivienne's debutante ball. When I was 14, I overheard my mother on the phone with her sister. "Margot's just different. She doesn't photograph well. She mumbles. She reads too much. Honestly, Victoria, some children are meant to shine, and some are meant to stay in the background. It's not cruelty, it's just nature." I was standing in the hallway.
She saw me.
She didn't apologize. She just said, "Were you eavesdropping? That's very rude, Margot. Go to your room." I learned early that in the Thornton household, asking for love was pointless.
So I stopped asking.
I made myself small. I got a scholarship to a state school in Georgia while Vivienne went to Princeton. I studied accounting because it was practical. I got a job at a mid-sized firm in Atlanta making $52,000 a year. I paid my own rent, bought my own groceries, built my own life from nothing. I thought that was freedom. Then Vivienne got engaged, and I realized I was still invisible. The engagement party was at the family estate in Charleston. 200 guests. I found out about it on Instagram. When I texted my mother asking if I was invited, she took 4 days to respond. "It's really more of a formal event, sweetheart. You wouldn't be comfortable." The bridal shower was at the Ritz in Paris. I found out about it when Vivienne posted photos. 15 of her closest friends.
Not me.
The bachelorette party was in the Maldives. I didn't even bother asking. And then came the wedding invitation itself. Or rather, the lack of one. 3 months before the wedding, my father called me. It was the first time he'd called me directly in 2 years. I remember my hands were shaking when I answered.
Margot, he said.
No hello. No how are you. Just my name like a item on his to-do list. Your mother and I have been discussing the wedding arrangements. Okay, I said carefully. Given the high-profile nature of the event, and given that several of Reed's business partners will be in attendance, we feel it would be best if you didn't attend. I was silent for so long he asked if I was still there. You're uninviting me from my own sister's wedding? We're not uninviting you. You were never invited. We're simply informing you of the decision.
Dad,
The guest list has been finalized. Reed's family has certain expectations. Your presence would raise questions we'd rather not answer.
He paused.
You understand.
I didn't understand.
I never would. But I said, fine. Good. Your mother will send you something to compensate for the inconvenience. The something arrived 3 days later. A Greyhound ticket from Atlanta to Denver, the opposite direction from France, and a check for $200 with a note in my mother's handwriting. For expenses. Don't contact us during the wedding week. We'll be too busy to respond. $200. That was my value to the Thornton family. $200 and a bus ticket to nowhere while they spent $12 million on a party I wasn't allowed to attend. I cashed the check. I needed the money. And I went to the bus station because I had nowhere else to go. That's where I was when my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. A 843 area code. Charleston. Hello. Miss Thornton? Ms. Margot Thornton. The voice was male, older, professional. Who is this? My name is Walter Pembroke. I'm an attorney with Pembroke, Hayes, and Associates in Charleston. I represented, your grandmother, Eleanor Thornton. I sat up straighter. Grandmother Eleanor had died 8 months ago. She was 91, sharp as a tack until the end, and the only person in my family who had ever looked at me like I mattered. I didn't know she had a personal attorney, I said. She had several. I handled her personal affairs separately from the family's legal team. Miss Thornton, I apologize for the delay in contacting you. Your grandmother left specific instructions that I was not to reach out until certain conditions were met. What conditions? Your parents' decision to exclude you from your sister's wedding. I blinked. What? Miss Thornton, your grandmother anticipated this moment. She left detailed instructions and a significant estate outside of the family trust, which has been held in a separate account that your parents don't know about. The estate becomes accessible to you under one condition, which is, you must attend your sister's wedding. A laugh escaped me, sharp and bitter. Mr. Pembroke, I don't know if you've been informed, but I'm currently sitting in a Greyhound station in Atlanta because my family specifically told me not to come. I'm aware. Your grandmother was quite specific in her instructions. She said, and I quote, when Harrison and Camille show Margot exactly who they are, call her. Tell her she needs to be at that wedding. Tell her I'm giving her the power to show them who she is. My throat tightened. Grandmother Eleanor's voice, even secondhand, made my eyes sting. What exactly did she leave me? I'm not authorized to discuss the details over the phone. But I can tell you that it's substantial enough that your presence at the wedding will change everything. I have a first-class plane ticket waiting for you at Hartsfield-Jackson. The flight leaves in 4 hours. A car will meet you at Charles de Gaulle and take you directly to the venue. Mr. Pembroke, I don't have anything to wear to a $12 million wedding. I have a duffel bag with 3 t-shirts and a pair of jeans. Your grandmother anticipated that as well. There will be appropriate attire waiting in your hotel room, along with a folder containing everything you need to know. Ms. Thornton, I've practiced law for 40 years. I've handled estates worth hundreds of millions. But I have never had a client as meticulous as your grandmother. She planned every detail of this moment. She believed in you. I suggest you don't waste the opportunity she's given you. I looked at the Greyhound ticket in my hand. Denver. Anonymity. The same invisibility I'd known my whole life. Then I looked at the departure board. My bus was leaving in 20 minutes. Send me the flight information, I said. 18 hours later, I was standing in a suite at the Hotel Le Muris in Paris, staring at a garment bag that contained a dress worth more than my annual salary. The folder Walter Pembroke had mentioned was on the desk. Inside were three things: a letter from my grandmother, a legal document I wasn't meant to open until the wedding reception, and a photograph. The photograph was of me at 7 years old, sitting on my grandmother's lap at her house in Charleston. I was laughing. I couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed like that. I opened the letter. My dearest Margot, if you're reading this, then my son and his wife have done exactly what I expected them to do. They have pushed you away, made you feel worthless, and tried to erase you from the family. I want you to know that I saw everything. Every slight. Every exclusion. Every time Camille looked at you like you were a stain on her perfect life. I saw it and I documented it, and I have spent the last 20 years preparing for this moment. You see, my darling, I built Thornton Capital. Not your father.
Me.
In 1962, when your grandfather died and left me with nothing but debts and a reputation to maintain, I took a $10,000 inheritance from my own mother and turned it into an empire. By the time her father was old enough to take over, the firm was worth $400 million. He's grown it since then, yes. But the foundation, the original capital, the relationships that made it all possible, those were mine. And I never forgot where I came from. I grew up poor, Margot. I know what it feels like to be the one who doesn't belong, the one who doesn't fit, the one they'd rather forget. I see myself in you. I always have. Which is why I've spent the last 20 years quietly moving assets into a separate trust. A trust your parents don't know about. A trust that is entirely, completely, legally yours. The document in this folder will explain everything. But don't open it until the reception. Don't open it until Harrison makes his toast to Vivienne and Reed. Let him have his moment of glory. And then, my darling, take back everything they stole from you. I love you. I always have. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you while I was alive. But I'm protecting you now. Your grandmother, Eleanor. I read the letter 3 times. My hands were shaking. I didn't know what was in that document. I didn't know what my grandmother had done. But I knew one thing. She had seen me. She had seen me when no one else did. And now, for the first time in my life, I had the power to make them see me too. The wedding was the next evening. Château de Villette, 40 minutes outside Paris. 400 guests. A celebrity chef. A 12-piece orchestra. And me, uninvited, with a first-class ticket and a secret that was about to destroy everything my parents thought they knew. I tried on the dress. It fit perfectly. A deep emerald silk that made my eyes look like jade. My grandmother had chosen it. She'd known my measurements, known what would make me feel powerful, known exactly what I would need for this moment. I looked at myself in the mirror. For 26 years, I'd been the invisible Thornton, the ghost, the embarrassment. Tomorrow, I would become something else entirely. The morning of the wedding, I received one more message from Walter Pembroke. Miss Thornton, I should inform you that your parents have become aware you may be in France. Your mother has contacted event security to ensure you're not admitted to the venue. I've taken the liberty of adding your name to the official guest list through the Montgomery family's coordinator, who owed your grandmother a considerable favor. You will be admitted. They cannot stop you. I smiled at my phone. Grandmother Eleanor had thought of everything. My mother thought she could keep me out. She thought a bus ticket and $200 would make me disappear. She had no idea who she was dealing with. The car arrived at 5 p.m. The chateau was golden in the late afternoon light, surrounded by formal gardens and a reflecting pool that seemed to stretch toward infinity. Rolls-Royces and Bentleys lined the circular drive. Valets in white gloves. Guests in couture. I stepped out of my car in my emerald dress, my hair professionally styled for the first time in my life, the legal document tucked inside a small clutch that my grandmother had also provided. A security guard approached me. Name? Margot Thornton. He checked his list. His eyes widened slightly. Ms. Thornton, you're not on the family list. Check the Montgomery list.
He did.
His expression shifted. My apologies, ma'am. Right this way. I walked through the chateau's entrance hall, past arrangements of white roses that cost more than my car, past ice sculptures and champagne towers and guests dripping with diamonds. And then I saw them. My mother, in a mother-of-the-bride gown that probably cost $80,000, holding court with a group of women who looked equally expensive. My father, in a custom tuxedo, shaking hands with men who controlled billions. And Vivienne, my sister, in her Vera Wang gown, surrounded by her bridesmaids, laughing at something Reed had whispered in her ear. None of them had seen me yet. I took a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. I found a quiet corner where I could watch. And I waited. The ceremony was beautiful.
I'll give them that.
Vivienne floated down the aisle like something out of a fairy tale. Reed's vows made several guests cry. The string quartet played Pachelbel's canon with perfect precision. I stood in the back, behind 400 guests who didn't know I existed, and I watched my family celebrate without me. My mother cried during the vows. She'd never cried for me. Not once. Not when I graduated college. Not when I got my first job. Not when I spent Christmas alone in my Atlanta apartment because I wasn't invited home. But she cried for Vivienne.
Of course she did.
The reception began at 8 p.m. Dinner was served in a converted ballroom with ceilings painted by artists who'd been dead for 300 years. The tables were decorated with flowers flown in from Holland. The place cards were hand-calligraphed in gold leaf.
There was no seat for me.
Of course there wasn't. But that was about to change. At 9:30 p.m., the best man finished his toast. The maid of honor finished hers. And then my father stood up. I moved closer. I found an empty spot near the back of the room, close enough to see his face. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harrison Thornton III said, his voice carrying that practiced authority I knew so well. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate this extraordinary union. When Vivienne was born, I knew immediately that she was special. She was the child who would carry the Thornton name into the future. The child who would make us proud." He smiled at Vivienne. She smiled back. Today, she has exceeded every expectation. She is everything a father could hope for. He raised his glass. To Vivienne and Reed. To the future of two great families. To the merger, he chuckled, and the guests chuckled with him. I mean the marriage of the century. Applause. Laughter. The clink of 400 champagne glasses. I reached into my clutch. It was time. I opened the document. I read it twice to make sure I understood what I was seeing. And then I started walking toward the head table. My mother saw me first. Her face went white. "Harrison," she hissed. "Harrison, she's here." My father turned. His expression cycled through confusion, recognition, and fury in the span of 2 seconds. "Margot." His voice was low, dangerous. "What are you doing here?"
"Hello, Dad," I said.
My voice didn't shake. I was surprised. "Hello, Mom." "Congratulations, Vivienne." My sister stared at me like I was a ghost, which to her I suppose I was. "Security," my mother said sharply. "Someone call security." "That won't be necessary," I said. "I'm on the guest list. The Montgomery family's guest list, specifically. I believe there's a gentleman named Charles Montgomery who owed grandmother Eleanor a favor." Charles Montgomery, Reed's grandfather, seated at a nearby table, raised his glass to me with a small smile. My father's jaw tightened. "Margot, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is not the time or place." "Actually," I said, "this is exactly the time and place. Grandmother Eleanor was very specific about that." I held up the document. "Dad, did you know that grandmother Eleanor had a separate trust? One that wasn't managed by Thornton Capital? One that you never knew about?" The color drained from his face. "I have here a legal document signed by Eleanor Thornton, witnessed by 3 attorneys, and notarized in the state of South Carolina. It's a transfer of assets. Would you like to know what she left me?" The room had gone silent. 400 guests, frozen with champagne glasses halfway to their lips. "Margot," my mother said, her voice shrill. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No, Mother. I'm embarrassing you. There's a difference." I looked at the document one more time, and I read it out loud. "I, Eleanor Grace Thornton, being of sound mind and body, Do hereby transfer to my granddaughter, Margot Elizabeth Thornton, the following assets. I paused. I let the silence stretch. 47% of the founding shares of Thornton Capital, held in separate trust since 1985. Current estimated value, $127 million. My father made a sound like he'd been punched. Additionally, I continued, the deed to the original Thornton estate in Charleston, purchased by me in 1962 and never transferred to the family trust. Current estimated value, $8.3 million. My mother grabbed my father's arm. And finally, I said, a letter to be read aloud at this occasion, written by Eleanor Thornton herself, explaining exactly why she made this decision. I pulled out the second page and began to read. To my son Harrison and his wife Camille, you have spent 30 years treating Margot like she doesn't exist. You have excluded her, diminished her, and tried to erase her from our family. You gave Vivienne everything and Margot nothing. You thought no one was watching. You were wrong. I was watching. And now I am giving Margot the power to show you exactly what she's worth. Everything you thought belonged to you, the company, the estate, the legacy, was built on my work. And now it belongs to her. If you want to remain involved in Thornton Capital, you will have to ask Margot's permission. She now controls the largest single block of shares. She is effectively your boss. I lowered the letter and looked at my father. His face had turned a shade of purple I'd never seen before. This is fraud, he sputtered. This will never hold up in court. It's been reviewed by 6 different law firms, I said calmly, including the Montgomery family's attorneys. It's airtight. Grandmother Eleanor spent 20 years making sure of that. I turned to my sister. Vivienne was staring at me, her perfect wedding makeup smeared with tears. Vivienne, I said softly, I'm sorry this happened at your wedding. I didn't choose the timing. Grandmother did. But I want you to know, this isn't about you. It never was. I looked back at my parents. You gave me a bus ticket. You gave me $200 and told me to disappear. You spent $12 million on a party and didn't even save me a seat. I held up the document. Grandmother Eleanor gave me $135 million and a seat at the head of the table. The room was absolutely silent. I'll be in touch about the board meeting, I said to my father. I believe there are some company decisions that will require my approval now. And then I turned and walked out of the chateau, past 400 stunned guests, past the champagne towers and ice sculptures, past the security guards who had tried to keep me out. Behind me, I heard my mother start to scream. The night air outside the chateau was cool and sweet, the kind of perfect French evening that poets write about. I could still hear the commotion inside, raised voices, my mother's hysterics, the murmur of 400 guests trying to process what they'd just witnessed. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From adrenaline. For 26 years, I had been invisible. I had been the Thornton they didn't mention, the daughter they wished they'd never had, the ghost in a family of golden children. And now, in the span of 5 minutes, I had become the most powerful person in the room. A black Mercedes pulled up to the entrance. Walter Pembroke stepped out, older than I'd imagined, silver-haired, distinguished, with the bearing of a man who had seen everything twice and was no longer surprised by anything. Miss Thornton, he said. That was quite an entrance. I learned from the best, I said. Grandmother always did like to make a statement. He smiled. She would have been proud. Shall we go? I imagine you'll want to review the full estate documents before the chaos begins. I glanced back at the chateau. Through the tall windows, I could see my father gesturing wildly, surrounded by men in suits. Lawyers, probably. My mother had collapsed into a chair, being fanned by 2 of her friends. What happens now? I asked. Now, Walter said, opening the car door for me, you decide what kind of person you want to be. We drove to his office in Paris, a 19th-century building near the Tuileries that looked more like a museum than a law firm. He led me to a conference room where 3 leather binders sat on a polished mahogany table. Your grandmother spent 20 years building this, he said. Every document, every asset transfer, every contingency plan. She knew exactly what your parents were capable of, and she prepared for every possible response. He opened the first binder. The shares in Thornton Capital were purchased over a period of 18 years, always in small enough quantities that they didn't trigger any reporting requirements. Your grandmother had a network of holding companies and trusts that even I didn't fully understand. By the time your father realized what was happening, it was too late. She owned 47% of the company he thought was his. He never knew? He suspected toward the end. About 6 years ago, he started asking questions about certain transactions. But your grandmother was already ill by then, and she convinced him it was just routine estate planning. He believed her because he wanted to believe her, because the alternative was unthinkable. He opened the second binder. The Charleston estate is more complicated. Technically, it's been in the family for generations. But what your father didn't know is that the deed was never transferred to the family trust. Your grandmother purchased it outright in 1962 when your grandfather died and the family was in financial crisis. She paid off the debts, saved the property, and kept it in her own name. Everyone assumed it was part of the family holdings. It wasn't. It was hers. And now it's yours. I stared at the documents. The numbers were staggering. $127 million in shares. $8.3 million in property. My grandmother had built an empire within an empire, and she'd left it all to me. Why me? I asked. Why not leave some to Vivienne? She's her granddaughter, too. Walter's expression softened. Your grandmother addressed that in her personal notes. She said, and I quote, Vivienne has never wanted for anything. She has had every advantage, every opportunity, every ounce of love and support that a child could receive. Margot has had nothing. This isn't about punishing Vivienne. It's about giving Margot the power to build her own life on her own terms. Vivienne will inherit plenty from Harrison and Camille. Margot will inherit from me. He handed me a smaller envelope. She also left you this. She said to give it to you after the wedding. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note and a photograph. The photograph was of my grandmother as a young woman, maybe 30, standing in front of a small office building in downtown Charleston. She was wearing a simple dress, her hair pinned back, and she was smiling with the kind of fierce determination I recognized. The note said, Margot, this photograph was taken in 1962, the day I opened my first office. I was alone. I was broke. Everyone told me I would fail. They were wrong. You are going to face the same doubts, the same critics, the same people who want to see you fall. Your father will try to destroy you. Your mother will try to manipulate you. The world will try to convince you that you don't deserve what I've given you. Don't listen. You are a Thornton, but more importantly, you are my granddaughter. And we don't give up. We don't back down. We don't let anyone else define our worth. Build something beautiful, my darling. Build something that's yours. I'll be watching. Love always. Grandmother. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I didn't. What do I do now? I asked Walter. That's entirely up to you. You have several options. You could sell your shares and walk away with over $100 million. You could hold your shares and collect dividends, approximately $4 million a year at current rates. Or you could take an active role in the company and use your voting power to influence its direction. What would my grandmother have wanted? She wanted you to be free. Free to choose your own path, free from your parents' control, free from the expectations that suffocated you your entire life. Whatever you decide, she would support. I looked at the photograph again. The young woman in the picture had built an empire from nothing. She had been underestimated, dismissed, and doubted. And she had proven everyone wrong. I was her granddaughter. Maybe it was time to prove them wrong, too. The first phone call came at 7 a.m. the next morning. Margot. My father's voice was ice. We need to talk. I'm listening. This is not how this is going to work. Whatever documents you have, whatever lies that attorney told you, this is a family matter, and it will be handled privately. I don't think so, Dad. Grandmother Eleanor spent 20 years making sure this wouldn't be handled privately. Every document is filed with the SEC. Every transfer has been reported. This isn't a family secret anymore. It's a matter of public record. Silence on the other end. What do you want? He finally asked. I haven't decided yet. Don't play games with me, Margot. I have lawyers who can tie this up in court for a decade. You have lawyers. I have 47% of the company, and I have the patience to wait.
I paused.
Grandmother Eleanor waited 20 years. I can wait too. I hung up. The second call came an hour later. My mother, crying. Margot, sweetheart, I don't understand what's happening. Why would you do this to us? To Vivienne? On her wedding day? Mother, when was the last time you called me? Silence. Before yesterday, I mean. When was the last time you picked up the phone to ask how I was doing? More silence. I'll tell you. It was 14 months ago. You called to ask if I could send Vivienne a birthday gift because you were too busy to shop for her yourself. Before that, it was 2 years. You called to tell me not to come home for Christmas because you were hosting the Montgomerys and didn't want to complicate things. Margot, that's not fair. Fair. I laughed. You gave me a bus ticket, Mother. A $200 bus ticket. You spent $12 million on Vivienne's wedding and you couldn't even save me a seat at the table. Don't talk to me about fair. Your grandmother has poisoned you against us. Grandmother Eleanor is the only person in this family who ever treated me like I mattered. And now I have $135 million and 47% of Dad's company to prove it. I hung up. The third call was from Vivienne. Margot. Her voice was hoarse. She'd been crying. Can we talk? Please? I almost said no. But something in her voice, something fragile and broken, made me hesitate. Where are you? Still at the chateau. Reed and I were supposed to leave for our honeymoon this morning, but she trailed off. Everything is ruined. Your wedding isn't ruined, Vivienne. You're still married. The reception was a disaster. Everyone is talking about what happened. Mother had to be sedated. Father is threatening to sue everyone. She paused. Why did you do it? I didn't choose the timing. Grandmother did. But you went along with it. You could have waited. You could have handled it privately. Could I? I asked. Vivienne, when was the last time this family handled anything privately with me? When was the last time anyone even acknowledged I existed? She didn't answer. You had 400 guests at your wedding. I was sitting in a bus station. You had a $47,000 dress. I was wearing jeans from Target. You had a celebrity chef and a castle in France. I had a $200 check and a note telling me not to embarrass the family. I didn't know about the bus ticket, she said quietly. Yes, you did. You knew everything. You just didn't care. Silence. Margot, She stopped. Started again. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I'm sorry. It was the first time my sister had ever apologized to me. For anything. I don't need your apology, I said. I don't need anything from you anymore. That's the point. What are you going to do? With the shares, I mean? I don't know yet. But whatever I decide, it's going to be my choice. Not Dad's. Not Mother's. Mine. I ended the call. Over the next 3 months, I learned more about business than I had in my entire career as an accountant. Walter Pembroke introduced me to a team of advisors, financial planners, corporate lawyers, investment specialists, who helped me understand exactly what I'd inherited. The 47% stake in Thornton Capital gave me the largest single block of shares in the company, but it didn't give me outright control. My father still controlled 35%, and the remaining 18% was held by various family members and outside investors. What it did give me was veto power. No major decisions could be made without my approval. No new acquisitions, no significant investments, no changes to company structure. My father tried everything. He offered to buy my shares for $90 million, a significant discount from their market value. I declined. He threatened legal action, claiming fraud and undue influence. His own lawyers told him the documents were airtight. He attempted to dilute my shares through a stock split. I blocked it. For 3 months, we were in a standoff. And for 3 months, Thornton Capital was paralyzed. It was Walter who finally suggested a solution. Your grandmother left you something else, he said one afternoon in his office. Something I wasn't authorized to share until you were ready. He handed me a folder. This is a proposal she drafted in 2019, before she became ill. It's a restructuring plan for Thornton Capital. She wanted to take the company public, diversify its holdings, and establish a charitable foundation with a focus on education for underprivileged children. I read through the proposal. It was brilliant, the kind of long-term vision that my father had never been capable of, the kind of thinking that built empires. She knew Dad would never agree to this, I said. She knew he would have no choice. Not if you controlled 47% of the company. Walter paused. Miss Thornton, your grandmother didn't leave you this money so you could destroy your father. She left it to you so you could build something better. Something that would last beyond any of you. I thought about the photograph. The young woman in front of the small office building. The determination in her eyes. She had built an empire from nothing. Now it was my turn. I called my father that evening. I'm not selling, I said. And I'm not walking away. But I have a proposal. I sent him the restructuring plan. He read it in silence while I waited on the phone. This is insane, he finally said. Going public? A charitable foundation? This would fundamentally change the nature of the company. It would also triple its value within 5 years, I said. I've had the numbers reviewed by independent analysts. Grandmother Eleanor didn't make emotional decisions. She made strategic ones. This is what she wanted. What do you want? I want a seat on the board. I want an equal salary to whatever you're paying yourself. And I want the foundation to be named after Grandmother Eleanor. Silence. And if I refuse? Then we stay in this standoff for another 3 months, another 6 months, another year. I have $127 million and no mortgage. I can wait forever. I paused. Can you? More silence. I'll need time to review this with my attorneys. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. 2 weeks later, we had a deal. 1 year after my grandmother's funeral, the Eleanor Thornton Foundation held its first fundraising gala. The event was at the Charleston estate, my estate now, and it raised $14 million for educational programs serving children from low-income families. My father gave a speech. It was polished, professional, and completely devoid of any acknowledgement that the foundation had been my grandmother's idea or that I had made it happen. I didn't care. I didn't need his acknowledgement anymore. My mother attended, wearing a smile so tight it looked painful. She didn't speak to me directly, but she also didn't cause a scene. Progress, I supposed. Vivienne came with Reed. They were still married, despite the chaos of their wedding. She found me near the end of the evening, holding a glass of champagne she hadn't touched. This is beautiful, she said, gesturing at the estate, the guests, the foundation banners. Grandmother would have loved it. She would have. Margot, I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About how I knew about the bus ticket. About how I didn't care.
She paused.
You were right. I knew. And I didn't say anything because it was easier not to. It was easier to be the favorite than to fight for you. I didn't say anything. I'm trying to be better, she said. I'm in therapy now. Working through some things. I know that doesn't fix anything between us. But I wanted you to know. I looked at my sister. For 26 years, she had been the golden child, and I had been the ghost. For 26 years, I had wanted her approval, her love, her acknowledgement. I didn't need any of it anymore. But maybe I could offer her something else. I'm having lunch next Saturday, I said. Just me, at a cafe in Charleston. You're welcome to join if you want. Her eyes filled with tears. Really? It's not forgiveness, I said. I'm not there yet. But it's a start. She nodded, unable to speak. It was a start. For both of us. The Thornton family will never be what it was. My parents and I maintain a civil relationship, limited mostly to board meetings and family events where ignoring each other would be too obvious. My mother sends birthday cards now. Actual birthday cards, with my actual name on them. Though I suspect her therapist suggested it rather than any genuine change of heart. My father has never apologized. I don't expect he ever will. But he respects me now, in his own limited way. He respects the power I hold. He respects that I could destroy him and choose not to. That's not love, but it's something. Vivienne and I have lunch every month. Sometimes we talk about the past. Sometimes we talk about the future. Sometimes we just sit in silence and try to understand each other. She's not the sister I wanted growing up, but she's trying to be the sister I need now. And that's more than I ever expected. I still have the photograph of my grandmother on my desk. The young woman with the fierce determination, standing in front of her small office building in 1962. She built an empire from nothing. And then she gave it to me. Not because I was special, not because I was the favorite, but because she saw something in me that no one else did. She saw herself. If you're watching this, if you recognize yourself in my story, the overlooked one, the forgotten one, the one they said would never amount to anything, I want you to know something. You don't need a $135 million inheritance to prove your value. But you do need to stop waiting for the people who hurt you to suddenly see your worth. My grandmother saw me when no one else did. And because of that, I learned to see myself. Find the people who see you. Build your own foundation, not with money, but with self-respect. And when the world tells you that you don't belong, remember, the people who built empires were never the ones who fit in. They were the ones who refused to disappear. I was a ghost for 26 years. A bus ticket and $200. An empty seat at the table. Now I run a foundation. I sit on the board of a $2 billion company. I live in the house my grandmother saved in 1962. And every morning, I wake up knowing that my worth was never determined by the people who failed to see it.
It was determined by me.
That's the real inheritance. And nobody can ever take it away.